My heart, it's carried a sorrow so heavy it feels like the weight of every winter I've lived through. I'm Evelyn, my hands worn thin as old lace, my voice soft as the wind through Georgia pines at dusk. Come sit with me, dear one, on this creaky porch and let me share a story. One that broke me piece by piece and taught me how to find peace in the smallest corners of a betrayed heart. It was 1953. I was 22, my hair still dark as coffee, my dreams bright as morning dew. My sister Clara, 2 years younger, was my shadow, my heart's twin. We grew up in a small Georgia town where peach blossoms perfumed the air and the river whispered secrets at night. Clara and I, we were woven tight, sharing giggles under the willow tree, vowing to hold each other close no matter what life brought. Our daddy was gone, taken by the war's cold hand when we were small. Mama worked her fingers raw at the cotton mill, her eyes tired but fierce with love. Clara and I, we were each other's strength, stitching hope from scraps of hardship. I'd braid her hair by lantern light, sing her old hymns, her laughter my sunlight. Evelyn, she'd whisper, eyes shining, we'll have a big house one day, just you and me forever. Love, though, it shifts the earth beneath you, doesn't it? I met James at the county fair, his smile warm as a July evening, his hands rough from carving wood. A carpenter with a steady heart, he stole mine quick. I dreamed of a life with him. A home, children, Clara by my side, laughing. She'd tease, he's stealing you, Evie. Her grin bright as a new penny. Or so I thought. We married in spring under a sky blue as hope itself. Clara stood beside me, her dress sewn with my own stitches, her hug tight as she whispered, I'm so happy for you. I believed her. Oh, how I believed. James and I settled in a little house just big enough for dreams, and I thought life was a gift wrapped in love's soft ribbon. But shadows, they creep slow, don't they? Clara started coming by more, lingering past supper, her laughter filling the air. She'd sit close to James, her hand brushing his arm, her eyes holding his too long. I told myself it was nothing, just sisterly warmth, but my heart, it whispered warnings, and I pushed them down deep, afraid of the truth. One evening, I came home early from helping Mama, arms full of laundry, the house too still. I found them in the kitchen, Clara in James's arms, her lips on his. My basket fell, linen spilling like my trust across the floor. Evelyn! Yeah. Clara gasped, stepping back, but her eyes held no shame. You're only a bold, cold defiance. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking like dry twigs. James stammered, it's not what it looks like. But his guilt was plain as daylight. Clara stood silent, her chin high. My sister, my heart, stealing what I thought was mine forever. I ran to Mama's, tears soaking my dress, my world crumbling like old clay. She held me, rocking slow, her voice worn thin. Hush, child, men stray, sisters stumble. But this wasn't a stumble. Clara kept coming, bold as ever, sitting at my table like she belonged. James swore it was a mistake, begged me to stay. It's and fool that I was. I did, clinging to hope. The tension grew, thick as fog rolling off the river. Clara's visits were a knife, twisting each time she smiled at James. I'd catch them whispering in the yard, her hand grazing his, my heart squeezing tight as a clenched fist. I wanted to scream, to banish her, but she was my sister, my blood, my past. Months passed, and I found I was carrying a child. Joy should have bloomed, but it was shadowed by doubt. Clara's eyes narrowed when I told her, her smile thin as a thread. A baby, she said, voice flat. That'll keep you busy. I'd hoped she'd share my happiness, but her words were cold, sharp as a winter wind. My Rose was born in winter, her cries a melody in my lonely heart. James held my hand, promising to be better, and for a moment I believed him. Clara stayed away, her absence louder than her presence. I thought maybe she'd seen her wrong. That time might mend what was torn. But betrayal, it festers, doesn't it? One spring morning, I found a letter in James's coat, Clara's handwriting curling like a vine. "Meet me at the willow. I can't stop thinking of you." My knees buckled, the world spinning. They hadn't stopped. They'd only learned to hide better. I faced James, my voice trembling like a leaf. "Is it true?" He hung his head, muttering, "She won't let me go, Evie." Clara, when I confronted her, laughed, cruel and sharp. "You always had everything," she spat. "Why can't I have something too? My sister, my Clara." She turned love into a weapon aimed at my heart. I felt hollow, like a tree eaten through by rot. I wanted to hate her, to curse her name, but all I could do was weep for the girl she'd been, for the sister I'd lost under that willow tree. Mama tried to mend us, calling us to her table. "Your sisters," she pleaded, voice frail as old paper. Clara sat stiff, eyes cold. "She's selfish, Mama," she said, "always was." I couldn't speak. How do you answer a lie that feels like truth? The town started whispering, their pity a weight I couldn't bear. "Evelyn's sister stole her man," they'd murmur, eyes soft with sympathy. I carried Rose, my head high, but inside I was crumbling like old plaster. James stayed, but his heart wandered, and Clara, she flaunted her hold, passing my house, her laugh a taunt that echoed in my dreams. Years dragged on, slow, heavy years. Rose grew, her smile my only light in the darkness. Clara's shadow lingered, her visits to Mama, never to me, each one a fresh wound. James worked late, avoiding my eyes, and I wondered, was he still hers? The question gnawed, relentless as a winter storm. One night I found him packing a bag. "I'm leaving, Evie," he said, voice low as a whisper. "Clara's waiting." My heart stopped, but I didn't beg. "Go," I whispered, clutching Rose's blanket, my fingers trembling. I heard Clara's car pull away, taking my husband, my sister, my trust, leaving only silence in their wake. Alone with Rose, I broke. Nights were endless, tears my only company. I'd rock my girl, singing soft, my voice cracking with pain. How could Clara do this? How could she choose him over me, over us? I felt like a fool, loving too deep, trusting too long, my heart a brittle leaf crushed underfoot. The town's whispers grew louder. "Poor Evelyn," they'd say, shaking their heads at the market. I stopped going to church, tired of their pitying glances. Mama passed that year, her last words haunting me like a ghost. "Forgive her, Evie, for your own sake." But how do you forgive a sister who tore your world apart? Rose was my anchor, her little hands pulling me through the days. I sewed dresses, took in laundry, kept us fed on scraps of pride. But the hurt stayed, a dull ache in my bones, heavy as the river's current. Clara and James moved to Atlanta, their life a distant rumor, but her name still burned. Oh, it burned like a brand. Time turned, slow as the season's wheel. Rose grew, her laughter a balm, but the scar of Clara's betrayal never faded. I'd see her in dreams, the girl she was, giggling under the willow, and wake with tears, missing her, hating her. The weight of it pressed me down, heavy as grief itself. 10 years passed. Rose was 9, bright as a sunflower, her eyes full of wonder. One evening, a knock came at the door. Clara stood there, older, thinner, her eyes hollow as a dry well. "Evelyn," she said, voice breaking like thin ice, "I need you." James had left her for another woman, younger, bolder. Life had turned the knife back, hadn't it? She wept, begging forgiveness, her words spilling like rain on parched earth. "I was jealous," she whispered, her hands trembling. "You had love, a home. I wanted it." Her tears were real, but mine were gone, cried out years ago. "Come in," I said, soft as a sigh, but my heart stayed locked, guarded. Clara stayed a week, sleeping on my couch, playing with Rose, her hands hesitant but gentle. She tried to rebuild what she'd shattered, but the pieces were too jagged, too sharp. I listened to her pain, her loneliness, but I couldn't forget, couldn't fully forgive. When she left, I hugged her, but it was stiff, like embracing a stranger under a cold sky. Rose grew, her laughter filling the house, her dreams bigger than mine ever were. She married a kind man, gave me grandchildren. Their giggles patched the holes Clara left. Clara wrote sometimes letters full of apologies, her handwriting shakier each year. I'd read them, fold them away, keeping my distance. The hurt was too deep, the trust too broken, but something shifted, not forgiveness, but a loosening of the knot in my chest. It started one summer, tending my garden, the air thick with honeysuckle. I found a sparrow, wing broken, trembling in the dirt. I took it in, fed it, wrapped its wing in soft cloth. Day by day, it grew stronger, its tiny heart beating against my palm. Caring for that sparrow, it was like stitching a torn seam. I'd sit with it, whispering soft, watching its eyes brighten. When it flew away, strong again, I felt light, like I'd let go of something heavy, something I'd carried too long. That sparrow taught me healing isn't about forgiving the one who broke you. It's about nurturing something, loving something, even when your heart's scarred. Rose and her children became my world, their love a steady warmth. Clara's letters kept coming, each one softer, sadder. She fell ill, her words growing faint, her strength slipping. I went to her, sat by her bed in a dim Atlanta room, her hand frail in mine. "I'm sorry, Evie," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. I nodded, squeezing her hand, but the words I wanted to say, they stayed locked inside, heavy as stones. When Clara passed, I wept, not for the woman she became, but for the girl she was. My sister under the willow, her laughter bright as morning. I buried her near Mama under that Georgia sky, and as I stood by her grave, I felt that sparrow's freedom again, not forgiveness, but release, letting go of the pain I'd carried like a shadow. The years since have been kind. Rose's children climb into my lap, asking for stories, their eyes wide as Clara's once were. I tell them of love, of loss, but never of betrayal. That's a weight I carry alone, though it's lighter now, softened by time. My garden thrives, birds return each spring, and I tend them, feeding their small, trusting hearts. Life's a hard teacher, dear one. Betrayal carves scars that time can't fully erase, but love, even for the smallest things, can mend what's broken. Hold fast to what you can save, a child's smile, a bird's fragile wing. That's where your strength will bloom, quiet and true. Oh, dear one, my heart has so much more to share, threads of sorrow and grace that weave longer than I ever thought. Let me expand this tale, draw it out slow like the rivers flow, adding layers of memory, whispers of the wind, and the deep aches that made me who I am. Evelyn's truth isn't just a chapter, it's a lifetime full of quiet storms and gentle dawns. Sit close, child, and listen as I unfold it all, making it richer, more alive, so you feel every beat of my weary heart. My heart. It's carried a sorrow so heavy it feels like the weight of every winter I've lived through. I'm Evelyn, my hands worn thin as old lace, my voice soft as the wind through Georgia pines at dusk. Come sit with me, dear one, on this creaky porch and let me share a story, one that broke me piece by piece and taught me how to find peace in the smallest corners of a betrayed heart. It was 1953. I was 22, my hair still dark as coffee, my dreams bright as morning dew on the peach blossoms. My sister Clara, 2 years younger, was my shadow, my heart's twin, her laughter like bells in the spring air. We grew up in a small Georgia town where the air was thick with the scent of ripening fruit, and the river whispered secrets at night, lapping against the banks like a mother's lullaby. Clara and I, we were woven tight, inseparable as the roots of that old willow tree by the water. We'd run barefoot through the orchards, juice dripping from our chins, sharing giggles and promises. We'll never be apart, she'd say, her small hand in mine, her eyes sparkling like stars in the summer sky. I believed her then. Oh, how I believed. Our daddy was gone, taken by the war's cold hand when we were just girls, his picture on the mantel faded but cherished. Mama worked her fingers raw at the cotton mill, her back bent under the weight of endless days, her eyes tired but filled with a fierce love that kept us going. She'd come home smelling of lint and sweat, hugging us tight, whispering, "My girls, you're my light." Clara and I, we were each other's strength, stitching hope from scraps of hardship in that tiny house with its leaking roof and creaking floors. I'd braid her hair by lantern light, the flame flickering shadows on the walls, singing her old hymns passed down from Grandma. Her laughter was my sunlight, chasing away the shadows of our loss. "Evelyn," she'd whisper, eyes shining with mischief, "we'll have a big house one day, just you and me, forever, with rooms full of books and windows open to the breeze." We'd spend afternoons under the willow, its branches draping like curtains, telling stories of faraway places we'd read about in Mama's tattered books. Clara loved the tales of princesses and adventures, her voice rising with excitement, while I dreamed of a simple life, a home filled with love. "You'll marry a prince," she'd tease, and I'd laugh, "and you'll be my queen right beside me." School days were hard, the walk long through dusty roads, but we held hands, skipping stones across puddles. Teacher said we were bright, but life pulled us toward work early. I took a job at the general store, counting pennies, while Clara helped Mama at home, her hands quick with needles, mending clothes for neighbors. Love, though, it shifts the earth beneath you, doesn't it? I met James at the county fair, the air alive with the smell of fried dough and cotton candy, laughter ringing from the Ferris wheel. His smile was warm as a July evening, his hands rough from carving wood, calloused from building barns and furniture. A carpenter with a steady heart, he stole mine quick. With a gentle word and a shared dance under the lights, he'd bring me wildflowers tied with string, his eyes soft as he said, "Evelyn, you're the prettiest thing in this town." My heart fluttered, dreams blooming like the peaches in season. Clara met him too, her smile polite, but I saw a flicker in her eyes, something I dismissed as sisterly curiosity. She'd tease me later, "He's stealing you, Evie, with those flowers and that grin." Her voice was light, her hug tight, and I thought nothing of it. We'd sit on the porch, Clara and I, as I gushed about James, her listening with a nod, her fingers twisting a lock of hair. "He sounds perfect," she'd say. But her tone held a note I didn't catch, a shadow in the sun. James courted me proper, walking me home from church, his arm linked with mine, talking of building a life. We'll have a house by the river, he'd promise, his voice steady, and my heart soared. Clara joined us sometimes, her laughter mixing with ours, but I noticed how her eyes lingered on him, how her hand brushed his when passing a plate at supper. I pushed it aside, too wrapped in love to see. Mama approved, her smile rare but genuine. He's a good man, she'd say, patting my hand. Clara nodded along, but her hugs felt tighter, her whispers quieter. Be happy, Evie, she'd say, and I believed it was joy for me, not envy brewing. We married in spring, under a sky blue as hope itself, the church filled with the scent of lilacs and fresh-cut grass. Clara stood beside me, her dress sewn with my own stitches, pale pink like dawn, her hug tight as she whispered, "I'm so happy for you." Her voice cracked just a bit, but I thought it emotion, sisterly love. The ceremony was simple, friends and neighbors clapping as we kissed, rice raining like blessings. James's eyes met mine, full of promise, and my heart felt full. Clara danced at the reception, her laugh bright, but I saw her watching us, her smile fading when she thought no one looked. James and I settled in a little house just big enough for dreams, with a porch overlooking the fields. I'd wake to the sound of birds, his arm around me, the air sweet with morning. "This is ours," he'd say, and I'd nod, my soul at peace. Clara visited often, bringing pies or flowers, her presence a comfort. At first, but shadows. They creep slow, don't they? Clara started coming by more, lingering past supper, her laughter filling the air like before, but sharper. She'd sit close to James, her hand brushing his arm as she reached for salt, her eyes holding his, too long over stories. I told myself it was nothing, just sisterly warmth, the way we'd always been. But my heart, it whispered warnings, and I pushed them down deep, afraid of the truth they might hold. James would laugh at her jokes, his eyes lighting up, and I'd feel a twinge, small as a thorn. "She's family," I'd remind myself, stirring the stew, the kitchen filled with the smell of onions and herbs. One afternoon, I caught them in the yard. Clara's head tilted close to his, her whisper low. They pulled apart when I approached, her smile quick. "Just talking about old times," she said, but her cheeks flushed. James nodded, avoiding my eyes, and the air felt thick, heavy with unsaid words. I lay awake that night, James snoring beside me, my mind racing. "It's nothing," I told myself, but doubt seeded, growing slow. Clara's visits became a routine, her presence a mix of joy and unease. She'd help with chores, her hands quick, but her glances at James, they lingered like a touch. The town fair came again, the air buzzing with excitement, lights twinkling like stars. James and I went. Clara tagging along, her arm linked with mine. But as I bought cotton candy, I turned to see them dancing, her head on his shoulder, his hand low on her back. My heart dropped, the sweet taste turning bitter. I confronted her later, my voice trembling. "What are you doing, Clara?" She looked away, her eyes filling. "Nothing, Evie. He's your husband." But her tone held a lie, and my world tilted just a bit. Days blurred, the tension building like clouds before rain. James worked longer hours, his kisses distracted, his eyes distant. Clara came less, but when she did, the air crackled. "I miss you," she'd say to me, but her gaze strayed to him. One evening, I came home early from helping Mama, arms full of laundry, the house too still, the air thick with silence. I found them in the kitchen, Clara in James's arms, her lips on his, the world stopping in that moment. My basket fell, linen spilling like my trust across the floor, a white sea of betrayal. Evelyn, Clara gasped, stepping back, her dress rumpled, her lips red, but her eyes held no shame, only a bold, cold defiance, like she'd been waiting for this. How could you? I whispered, my voice breaking like dry twigs underfoot, my heart shattering in my chest. James stammered, "It's not what it looks like," his face pale, his guilt plain as daylight streaming through the window. Clara stood silent, her chin high. My sister, my heart, stealing what I thought was mine forever. I ran to Mama's, tears soaking my dress, my world crumbling like old clay under rain. The path blurred, my feet heavy, the river song mocking my pain. She held me, rocking slow on her porch, her voice worn thin from years of hardship. "Hush, child, men stray, sisters stumble," she said, her arms strong despite her frailty. But this wasn't a stumble. It was a fall. Deep and deliberate. I sobbed into her shoulder, the scent of her soap a comfort from childhood. "Why, Mama, my own sister?" She stroked my hair, her sigh deep. "Jealousy poisons, Evie, but family is blood." I stayed there that night, the bed hard, my mind spinning with images of them together. Clara's laugh, James's touch. How long, how many times the moon watched through the window, indifferent to my pain. The next day, I returned home, my steps slow, my heart armored. James waited, his eyes red, his voice pleading. "It was a mistake, Evie. Forgive me." I looked at him, the man I loved, now a stranger. "And Clara?" He hung his head silent. Clara came that evening, her knock soft, her face pale. "Evie," she started, but I cut her off, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Why?" She looked away, tears falling. "I don't know. I just wanted what you had." We sat at the table, the air thick, Mama joining us later. "Talk it out," she said, her hands clasped. Clara wept. "I'm sorry," but her words felt hollow. James promised change, and fool that I was, I stayed, clinging to the life I'd built. The tension grew, thick as fog rolling off the river, smothering the light. Clara's visits were a knife, twisting each time she smiled at James, her eyes full of secrets. I'd catch them whispering in the yard, her hand grazing his arm, my heart squeezing tight as a clenched fist. I wanted to scream, to banish her from my home, but she was my sister, my blood, my past, the girl who'd shared my bed during storms. "Please, Clara," I'd beg in private, "stop this." She'd nod, tears in her eyes, but the looks continued, the air charged. Neighbors started noticing, their whispers at the store. "Trouble in that house," they'd say, their pity a sting. I held my head high, but inside the doubt gnawed, like rats in the attic. Months passed, and I found I was carrying a child. Joy should have bloomed like the roses in my garden, but it was shadowed by doubt, the news bittersweet. My body changed, my belly swelling, but my heart felt empty. James was thrilled at first, his hand on my stomach, but his eyes strayed. Clara's eyes narrowed when I told her, her smile thin as a thread, her hug loose. "A baby," she said, voice flat, her hand lingering on her own flat belly. "That'll keep you busy, Evie." I'd hoped she'd share my happiness, but her words were cold, sharp as a winter wind cutting through the trees. I spent days alone, sewing tiny clothes, my needle pricking my fingers as thoughts pricked my mind. Will this child hold us together? I'd wonder, the river's flow a constant companion from my window. The pregnancy was hard, morning sickness like waves, my body weary. James helped some, but his late nights increased, his excuses thin. Clara visited less, her absence a relief and a hurt. She's jealous, Mama said, her voice wise. Give her time. The baby kicked, a flutter of life, and I clung to it, whispering promises to my unborn child. I'll love you fierce, I'd say, my hand on my belly, tears falling. My Rose was born in winter, the snow blanketing the world, her cries a melody in my lonely heart, piercing the cold air. The midwife handed her to me, her tiny face red, her eyes opening to mine. James held my hand, promising to be better. His voice choked, and for a moment I believed him, the room filled with hope. Clara came days later, her arms empty, her eyes on the bundle. She's beautiful, she said, but her voice held a note of longing. She held Rose briefly, her touch gentle, but she left soon, the door closing soft. Raising Rose, those early days were a blur of feeds and cries. My body aching, my spirit tired. James was there, but distant, his mind elsewhere. The town celebrated, bringing casseroles, their smiles warm. A little angel, they'd say, and I'd nod, hiding the storm inside. Clara's shadow lingered, her visits rare but piercing. She'd coo over Rose, but her eyes met James's, a silent conversation. Stop, I'd think, but words failed. But betrayal, it festers, doesn't it? One spring morning, the air sweet with bloom, I found a letter in James's coat, hidden in the pocket like a secret. Clara's handwriting curled like a vine across the paper. Meet me at the willow. I can't stop thinking of you, my love. My knees buckled, the world spinning. Rose's cry from the crib, a distant echo. Tears blinded me as I read the words again, each one a dagger. They hadn't stopped. They'd only learned to hide better, their affair a living thing, growing in the dark. I faced James that evening, the letter in my hand, my voice trembling like a leaf in wind. Is it true? He hung his head, his shoulders slumping, muttering, She won't let me go, Evie. It's like a spell. The room spun, the fire crackling mockingly. Choose, I said, my heart breaking anew. He looked at me, eyes full of conflict, but silent. Clara, when I confronted her at Mama's house, the air thick with tension, laughed at first, cruel and sharp. Her face twisted. You always had everything, she spat, her hands clenched. The good sister, the perfect life. Why can't I have something too? Her words cut deep, revealing the jealousy I'd missed, the poison in her heart. My sister, my Clara. She turned love into a weapon aimed at my heart, her envy a fire that burned us all. I left, my steps heavy, the river's roar in my ears. I felt hollow, like a tree eaten through by rot, the bark cracking. I wanted to hate her, to curse her name to the skies, but all I could do was weep for the girl she'd been, for the sister I'd lost under that willow tree, her hand in mine. Mama tried to mend us, calling us to her table, the kitchen smelling of fresh bread. Your sisters, she pleaded, voice frail as old paper, her hands trembling. Clara sat stiff, eyes cold as stone. She's selfish, Mama, she said, always was, taking all the love. I couldn't speak. How do you answer a lie that feels like truth twisted from years of shared secrets? The argument escalated, voices rising, tears flowing. You stole him, I cried, my finger pointing. Clara stood, her chair scraping. He chose me, she said, and the room fell silent, the truth hanging heavy. The town started whispering, their pity a weight I couldn't bear, their eyes following me at the market. Evelyn's sister stole her man, they'd murmur, voices low, eyes soft with sympathy that felt like salt in wounds. I carried Rose, my head high, but inside I was crumbling like old plaster under rain, flakes falling away. James stayed, but his heart wandered, his touches cold, his eyes distant as the horizon. Clara flaunted her hold, passing my house on walks, her laugh a taunt that echoed through the open windows, piercing my days. Years dragged on, slow, heavy years. Each one a stone added to my burden. Rose grew, her smile my only light in the darkness, her toddling steps a joy amid the pain. She'd reach for me, her tiny hands trusting, and I'd hold her, whispering, "You're my world." Clara's shadow lingered, her visits to Mama never to me, each one a fresh wound reported by neighbors. James worked late, avoiding my eyes, his dinners cold, his excuses thin, and I wondered, was he still hers? The question gnawed, relentless as a winter storm, rattling the windows. One night, the wind howling outside, I found him packing a bag, his clothes folded neat, his face set. "I'm leaving, Evie," he said, voice low as a whisper in church. "Clara's waiting, we can't fight it anymore." My heart stopped, the room spinning, but I didn't beg, my pride a fragile shield. "Go," I whispered, clutching Rose's blanket to my chest, my fingers trembling with rage and sorrow. I heard Clara's car pull away in the dark, taking my husband, my sister, my trust, leaving only silence in their wake, the house empty as my soul. Alone with Rose, I broke that night, collapsing on the floor, sobs racking my body. Nights were endless after that. Tears, my only company in the dark, the clock ticking like a mocking heart. I'd rock my girl, singing soft hymns, my voice cracking with pain, the words catching in my throat. How could Clara do this? How could she choose him over me, over us, the blood we shared? I felt like a fool, loving too deep, trusting too long, my heart a brittle leaf crushed underfoot, scattered by the wind. The town's whispers grew louder, like bees in a hive. "Poor Evelyn," they'd say, shaking their heads at the market, their baskets full while my heart was empty. I stopped going to church, tired of their pitying glances, the hymns reminding me of lost faith. Mama passed that year, her body frail, her last words haunting me like a ghost in the mist. "Forgive her, Evie, for your own sake, or it'll eat you alive." But how do you forgive a sister who tore your world apart, leave in shreds? Rose was my anchor, her little hands pulling me through the days, her babbles a lifeline. I sewed dresses for neighbors, took in laundry, the steam from the iron rising like my prayers, kept us fed on scraps of pride. The house quiet but clean, the river's song my companion, but the hurt stayed, a dull ache in my bones, heavy as the river's current pulling at the banks. Clara and James moved to Atlanta, their life a distant rumor carried by letters from distant kin, but her name still burned. Oh, it burned like a brand on my soul. Time turned, slow as the season's wheel, leaves falling, snow blanketing, springs blooming. Rose grew, her laughter a balm on open wounds, but the scar of Clara's betrayal never faded completely. I'd see her in dreams, the girl she was, giggling under the willow, and wake with tears, missing her, hating her, the emotions tangled like vines. The weight of it pressed me down, heavy as grief itself, my days a routine of survival. Rose started school, her pigtails bouncing, her questions innocent. "Where's Daddy?" she'd ask, and I'd smile. "He's away, darling," the lie bitter on my tongue. Neighbors helped sometimes, bringing food, their kindness a light. "You're strong, Evelyn," they'd say, but inside I felt weak, broken. 10 years passed as Rose was 9, bright as a sunflower in the field, her eyes full of wonder and questions. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange, a knock came at the door, hesitant. Clara stood there, older, thinner, her dress faded, her eyes hollow as a dry well after drought. "Evelyn," she said, voice breaking like thin ice underfoot, "I need you, please." James had left her for another woman, younger, bolder, his pattern repeating. Life had turned the knife back, hadn't it? Poetic justice, sharp and cold. She wept on my porch, her shoulders shaking, begging forgiveness, her words spilling like rain on parched earth after years of dry. "I was jealous," she whispered, her hands trembling in her lap. "You had love, a home, happiness. I wanted it. Needed it to feel whole." Her tears were real, falling hot, but mine were gone, cried out years ago in lonely nights. "Come in," I said, soft as a sigh. My heart stayed locked, guarded by walls built of pain. Clara stayed a week, sleeping on my couch, the fabric worn from use, playing with Rose, her hands hesitant but gentle on her niece. She tried to rebuild what she'd shattered, cooking meals, telling stories, but the pieces were too jagged, too sharp to fit smooth. I listened to her pain, her loneliness in Atlanta, the empty rooms, the cold beds. "He left me broken," she said, her voice cracking. But I couldn't forget, couldn't fully forgive, the memories too vivid, the hurt too raw. When she left, I hugged her, but it was stiff, like embracing a stranger under a cold sky, the air heavy with unsaid words. "Take care," I said, and she nodded, tears in her eyes, the car pulling away like before, but this time without taking my heart. Rose asked about her, her eyes curious. "Who was that lady, Mama?" I smiled. "An old friend, darling, from long ago." The lie protected her, but weighed on me. Rose grew, her laughter filling the house like sunlight, her dreams bigger than mine ever were, her spirit unbroken. She married a kind man, steady as James never was. Their wedding simple, the church filled with flowers I picked myself. She gave me grandchildren. Their giggles patched the holes Clara left, their tiny hands in mine a joy. Tommy, Lily, their faces bright, their questions endless. "Grandma, tell us a story," they'd beg, and I'd weave tales of rivers and willows, skipping the dark. Clara wrote sometimes, letters full of apologies, her handwriting shakier each year, the paper yellowing. I'd read them by the window, the river flowing outside, my heart softening a bit. She's suffering, I think. But the distance remained, but something shifted in me. Not forgiveness, but a loosening of the knot in my chest like a tight braid coming undone. It started one summer, tending my garden, the air thick with honeysuckle and bee buzz. I found a sparrow, wing broken, trembling in the dirt, its eyes wide with fear. I took it in, cupped in my hands, its heart beating fast against my palm, fed it seeds, wrapped its wing in soft cloth from an old dress, whispered, "You'll fly again, little one." Day by day it grew stronger, its chirp a thank you, its eyes trusting. Caring for that sparrow, it was like stitching a torn seam in my soul, needle by needle. I'd sit with it on the porch, the sun warming us, watching its feathers ruffle. When it flew away, strong again, circling once before vanishing, I felt light, like I'd let go of something heavy, something I'd carried too long. That sparrow taught me. Healing isn't about forgiving the one who broke you. It's about nurturing something, loving something, even when your heart's scarred. Rose, my grandchildren, that sparrow. They gave me peace Clara never could, a quiet bloom in the ruins. Years later, Clara fell ill, her letters growing faint, her words wandering. I visited her in Atlanta, the city noise jarring after my quiet town, sat by her bed, her hand frail in mine, paper-thin skin. "I'm sorry, Evie," she whispered, tears pooling in her sunken eyes, her breath shallow. I nodded, squeezing her hand, but the words I wanted to say, they stayed locked inside, heavy as stones in my throat. When Clara passed, I wept, not for the woman she became, bitter and alone, but for the girl she was, my sister under the willow, her laughter bright as morning light. I buried her near Mama, under that Georgia sky dotted with clouds, and as I stood by her grave, the wind whispering through the trees, I felt that sparrow's freedom again, not forgiveness, but release, a letting go of the pain I'd carried like a shadow for so long. The years since have been kind. Rose's children climb into my lap, asking for stories, their eyes wide as Clara's once were, their innocence a balm. I tell them of love, of loss, but never of betrayal in full. That's a weight I carry alone, though it's lighter now, softened by time's gentle hand. My garden thrives, birds return each spring, and I tend them, feeding their small, trusting hearts with crumbs and seeds. The river still hums its old song, a constant in a changing world. Life's a hard teacher, dear one. Betrayal carves deep scars that time can't erase, but love, even for the smallest things, can mend the soul. Hold fast to what you can save. It's where you'll find your strength, quiet and true. Oh, but let me linger longer, child. There's so much more to this old heart's tale. After that sparrow flew free, I found myself noticing the little things more. The way the sun slanted through the leaves, casting golden patterns on the porch floor. I'd sit there, rocking slow, Rose's quilt over my knees, thinking of how life turns, like the river bending around rocks. Rose came often, her family in tow, the house filling with the smell of her baking, apple pies like Mama used to make. "Tell the kids about the fair," she'd say, and I'd spin the yarn, the lights, the music, but stop before James, before the pain. The children listened, chins on hands, their eyes sparkling. Tommy, my first grandson, was a dreamer, always sketching birds and trees. "Grandma, teach me to draw the willow," he'd ask, his pencil flying. I'd guide his hand, remembering Clara's sketches as a girl, her talent lost to envy. "Make it your own," I'd say, my voice soft. And he'd smile, his art a bridge to the past. Lily, the granddaughter with Clara's eyes, was fiery, questioning everything. "Why do people hurt each other?" she'd ask, her brow furrowed. I'd pause, the ache stirring. "Jealousy, dear, it blinds us, but love lights the way back." She'd hug me, her arms strong, and I'd feel the mending. One winter, a storm hit hard, winds howling like lost souls, the river rising high. The power went out, the house dark, but we gathered by the fire, candles flickering. Rose told stories of my strength. Your grandma raised me alone through harder storms. The children listened, wide-eyed, and I felt my legacy woven in their hearts. Spring brought renewal, the garden bursting with color, tulips nodding in the breeze. I'd kneel in the dirt, my knees aching, planting with Lily's help. "See how the seeds push through," I'd say, "even after cold winters." She'd nod, her hands dirty, learning life's resilience. Tommy's teen years brought rebellion, his voice raised, his steps heavy. "I don't need stories," he'd snap, but he'd come back, sitting quiet. Tell me about betrayal, he asked once, his eyes troubled. I sighed, choosing words careful. It's a thief, child, steals trust, but you reclaim it with love's small acts. He listened, his heart softening, and later he built me a birdhouse, his hands like James's but kinder. For your sparrows, he said, and I wept, the circle turning. Rose's husband recovered fully, his laugh booming, their home full. They took me on trips, the car bumping down roads, the world widening. See the ocean, Mama, Rose said, the waves crashing, salt in the air. I stood there, the vastness healing, betrayal small against it. Lily's wedding was a joy, the willow draped in lights, her vows echoing my own long ago. I danced slow with Tommy, his arm steady. You've taught us all, he whispered, and my heart swelled, scars mere lines. Holidays came, the table laden, voices overlapping. I'd watch, content, the pain a distant memory. This is family, I'd think, mended not perfect, as my vision dimmed, sounds sharpened, a bird's call, a child's laugh. Rose read to me, her voice a comfort. You're our root, she said. I smiled. No, you're my bloom. The end came gentle, surrounded by love, a grandchild's hand in mine. As I slipped away, I felt the sparrow's flight, free at last. But dear one, the story doesn't end there. Legacies live on. Rose told my tales to her grandchildren, her voice soft as mine. Love the small things, she'd say, my words echoing. Tommy's shop grew, his son learning the trade, building with heart. Great-grandma's lesson, he'd tell him, wood shavings flying. Lily's children by the river planting trees. Roots deep, they'd chant my truth in their games. Betrayal faded, love eternal. Hold fast, child, it blooms forever. Oh, let me add more layers. The days I spent alone after Rose moved, the house quiet, the clock ticking. I'd knit, needles clicking, memories unspooling like yarn. Clara's face in my mind, her smile young, her betrayal a puzzle I turned over. Neighbors visited, their stories mingling with mine. You've inspired us, they'd say, and I'd shake my head. No, life did. A stray cat came curling on my lap, its purr a new mending. Another small love, I'd murmur, feeding it scraps, its eyes trusting. The town honored me once, a plaque for my sewing, but I waved it off. It's the heart that matters, I said, the crowd clapping, grandchildren's graduations, their caps tossing, my pride swelling. You did this, Rose said. We all did, I replied. Sickness came brief, my body weary, but spirit strong. I'm not afraid, I told Rose, her hand in mine. Dreams of the willow, Clara waiting. Forgive me, she'd say. I have, I'd whisper, release complete. Dear one, Evelyn's truth is vast. Pain to peace, betrayal to bloom. Love the small and live full. Let's deepen the childhood. Clara and I picking berries, thorns pricking, juice staining our dresses. Race you, she'd cry, her feet flying, my laugh following. Storms scared her, thunder booming, lightning flashing. I'd hold her. It's just angels bowling, I'd say, her trembling easing. Mama's stories at night, her voice weaving magic. Once upon a time, she'd begin, our eyes heavy with sleep. School plays, Clara the star, her lines perfect. I'd cheer loudest, her bow for me. First love's mine a boy with freckles, Clara's jealousy hidden. He's silly, she'd say, but her eyes sad. The war's shadow, letters from Daddy, then silence. We cried together, arms entangled, moving to the mill town, the air smoky, our dreams adjusting. We'll make it, Clara said, her chin high, meeting James, the fair's chaos, his hand taking mine. Clara's smile, but her grip tight on my arm, the wedding planning, her helping with flowers, her suggestions sharp. Make it perfect, she put her eyes on him. You meant the honeymoon, a cabin by the lake, waves lapping. James's love, but letters from Clara, her words longing. Back home, the routine, her visits increasing. I miss you, she'd say, but stay for him. The first suspicion, a lipstick on his collar, not mine. Work, he said, but my heart knew. The confrontation, tears, promises. Never again, he swore, but Clara's shadow loomed. Pregnancy, joys, the kicks, the names. Rose for beauty. I chose. Clara's suggestion dismissed. Birth pains, hours long, his hand cold. Rose's cry, my joy pure. Clara's visit, her hold on Rose, her eyes envious. She's like you, she said, but left soon. The letter discovery, the Willow meeting, my world shattering again. The final leave, the car lights fading, my sobs endless. Raising Rose, her first steps, her words, Mama, my heart mending tiny. Clara's return, her brokenness, my guarded help. The sparrow, its wing, my care, its flight. Grandchildren, their births, their milestones. Tommy's art, Lily's fire, Rose's trials, my support, later years, the peace, the end, the release. Oh, dear one, this tale could go on, but the heart knows when to rest.